I was never her mother, but I might as well have been. I clothed her, fed her, stood between her and the world when it got too heavy. She was my baby sister, but I gave her the loyalty of a best friend and the sacrifices of a parent who never got to dream for herself. And on the most important day of her life, her wedding day, she looked me in the eye and told me I didn't belong. 3 hours before the ceremony, I stood in front of a mirror in my small apartment on the south side of Atlanta, smoothing the neckline of my dark plum dress. I'd ironed it 3 times the night before, obsessed with every fold and line. It wasn't vanity, it was respect. For her. At 32, I should have been thinking about my own path, my degree, my business ideas, maybe even my own wedding someday. But instead, most of my 20s were spent raising Lena. After our parents were killed in a highway crash when she was only 12, I was just 19. I dropped out of college, picked up 2 jobs, and made sure she never saw the inside of a foster home. I taught her to braid her hair, to pray when the lights went out, to smile even when we had nothing but noodles for dinner. I was the constant, the one who made sure she didn't break. So when I got to the church that morning, and the wedding planner told me I'd been seated in row 5, I thought she must have made a mistake. "I'm her sister," I said, confused. The planner, a young woman tapping fast on her iPad, gave a polite smile. "Yes, Miss Jordan, row 5. My chest tightened. The front rows were already reserved for her fiancé's family, his colleagues, and a few friends I'd never even met. People who hadn't been there when Lena cried herself to sleep, or when she almost quit high school. People who didn't know how much it had cost me, emotionally, financially, spiritually, to keep her afloat. Still, I smiled and took my seat. Maybe it was just an oversight. Maybe later, during her toast, she'd look my way and say, "This day wouldn't exist without my sister." But the day didn't go that way. At the reception, I was placed at table 11, right beside the kitchen doors, with guests who barely knew her. My meal arrived cold. I barely tasted it anyway. I watched her laugh with her new mother-in-law, toasting and glowing under the chandeliers. When she stood to give her speech, I straightened my back, thinking maybe this was the moment. Maybe she'd remember me. Lena raised her glass, her smile bright and steady. "Family isn't always about who you're born to," she said. "It's about who chooses you." Then her eyes found mine, and she added, softly but sharp enough to cut through the room, "You can leave now." The room froze. For a few seconds, I thought I'd misheard her, but the silence around me confirmed it. My throat burned, and my hands trembled as I reached for my purse. The plum dress I'd chosen so carefully suddenly felt like a costume, like I was pretending to belong in a story that was never meant for me. I stood there, heart pounding, while 200 people watched. Some looked confused, others looked entertained. A few whispered, probably already composing their group texts, "Girl, you won't believe what just happened at Lena's wedding." Then, before I could move, her groom, Marcus, stood up. At first, I thought he was about to escort me out, maybe to smooth things over, protect her pride. But then, he reached for the microphone. Lena's smile faltered. "Marcus, don't!" she muttered under her breath, her hand twitching toward his sleeve. He gently pulled away and turned to the crowd. "Before Simone leaves," he said evenly, "I think there's something everyone here should know." Lena's color drained from her face. "Marcus, please," she whispered, panic bleeding through her voice. But it was too late. He'd already made up his mind. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice steady but charged with something heavy, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. "When I first met Lena," he began, she told me a story about her family, about her sister. He looked at me briefly before turning back to the crowd. She said Simone was cold, controlling, that she acted more like a parent than a sibling, that she never supported her happiness. A faint ripple of murmurs rolled through the room. My knees felt weak. I stared down at the floor, my fingers tightening around my purse strap. Marcus continued, "And I believed her. For a long time I did. Because I loved her, and when you love someone, you don't question their pain, you try to protect it." Lena's voice came out sharp and pleading. "Marcus, please stop. Not here." He turned to her slowly. "No, Lena. For once, I am stopping, just not for you." He faced the guests again. "A few weeks ago, something didn't sit right. Every time Simone visited, she sat in the back. She brought gifts that Lena barely acknowledged. She'd ask questions, and no one answered her back. I started to wonder what kind of sister that really was, or if I'd been told the truth at all. The audience shifted in their seats. Even the servers stopped moving. So, he went on. I reached out to someone. Lena's aunt, Miss Valerie. The woman who helped raise them after their parents died. Lena's head snapped toward him. "You called Aunt Valerie?" she whispered, her voice trembling now. He nodded. "I did. And what she told me broke me." The room was still, except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Simone wasn't the cold, overbearing sister she was made out to be, Marcus said. She was a kid, barely 19, who gave up everything so her 12-year-old sister wouldn't end up in foster care. He looked directly at Lena then. While you were in high school plays and cheer practice, she was working double shifts. While your friends went to college parties, she was selling her car to pay your tuition. Every single thing you have started with her sacrifice. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Shock, disbelief, shame. Marcus pointed toward me, voice breaking. That woman sitting near the kitchen, eating cold chicken next to strangers. She's the reason you're standing here in that white gown instead of struggling to survive. Lena's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her mascara streaked as tears spilled down her cheeks. The bouquet slipped from her hand, falling to the floor with a soft thud. She's the one you ignored, Marcus continued. The one you belittled, and tonight, the one you tried to erase in front of 200 people. The silence grew so thick you could almost hear hearts breaking. Marcus stepped closer to Lena, his voice low but firm. I can't marry someone who treats the only person who's ever stood by her like this. Not anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke. Someone gasped. Another whispered, Lord, have mercy. Lena swayed slightly, reaching out for his arm. Marcus, please, she said, her voice cracking. You're embarrassing me. He looked at her, sadness softening the edges of his anger. No, Lena, you embarrassed yourself, and you humiliated the one person who loved you the most. He turned back to the crowd, voice heavy but resolute. Everyone deserves to know the truth before I make the biggest decision of my life. Then, without another word, he removed his wedding band, the gold glint catching the candlelight, and set it gently on the table beside the untouched champagne flutes. The sound of metal against glass echoed like a gunshot. I can't build a future with someone who destroys the very person who saved her, he said quietly. Lena's knees gave out. She sank into a chair, face buried in her hands. And me. I stood frozen. For the first time in years, someone had defended me out loud, and the whole world had heard it. The room was silent except for the faint hum of whispers and the sound of someone's fork clattering against a plate. I stood by table 11, my hands trembling. I didn't remember standing up. Only that one moment I was frozen, and the next, I was moving. Each step toward the exit felt like peeling away years of weight I didn't know I still carried. Simone, wait! Lena's voice cracked behind me. Please, I didn't mean. But I didn't turn back. I'd spent too many years turning back. The whispers followed me out. Hushed voices laced with disbelief and pity, phones already buzzing, recording what they'd call the wedding disaster of the year. By the time I stepped into the garden outside, the air hit different. Cooler. Freer. The music inside was muffled now, a ghost of the chaos I'd left behind. I found an empty bench under a string of fairy lights and sat down, clutching my purse with both hands. For the first time that night, I exhaled. The humiliation still burned in my chest, but beneath it, something else stirred relief. The kind that comes when a wound finally stops bleeding. My phone vibrated in my lap. Aunt Valerie. I hesitated before answering. Hey, baby, she said softly, her voice tight. I just got off the phone with Marcus. He told me everything. Are you all right? I don't even know, I said honestly. I think I'm just tired. Tired of begging to be loved right. Valerie sighed deeply. You've done enough begging in this life. What she did tonight wasn't a mistake. Simone, it was cruelty. But that man showed more truth in 10 minutes than some people do in a lifetime. I looked back at the glowing windows of the reception hall. Through the glass, I could still see silhouettes moving. Lena's white dress, the guests milling about trying to piece together gossip. I gave her everything, I whispered. My 20s, my dreams, my peace. For what? Valerie's tone softened. For survival. But now, baby girl, it's time you start giving something to yourself. Just then, headlights swept across the garden. A black sedan pulled up, and the door opened. Valerie stepped out, still wearing her Sunday hat and her same fierce love. Come on, she said firmly. I'm taking you home. No more sitting in the fifth row of your own life. Her words hit me harder than Lena's ever had. I got in the car, tears threatening but refusing to fall. The silence on the drive was heavy but kind, the kind that lets you breathe after you've been holding it too long. That night, I lay on Valerie's couch, wrapped in one of her old quilts, the smell of cinnamon and lavender floating in the air. She handed me a cup of chamomile tea. Get some sleep, she whispered. Tomorrow you start over. For the first time in years, I did. I fell asleep without worrying who needed me, and dreamt not of fixing someone else's life, but of finding my own. Morning sunlight streamed through Aunt Valerie's kitchen window like a soft apology from the universe. I sat at her small round table, wrapped in one of her oversized cardigans, sipping coffee that tasted like calm after a storm. My body felt heavy, like I'd been carrying grief in my bones. But somewhere inside, there was space now, the kind that comes after you finally stop fighting to be seen. Valerie placed a warm croissant on my plate and sat across from me, her sharp eyes soft with concern. So, she said gently, what do you want to do next? I looked out the window for a long moment. I didn't have an answer. My entire adult life had revolved around Lena, her grades, her dreams, her happiness. The thought of redirecting that energy toward myself felt strange, but also right. I want to live for me now, I said quietly. Not just survive, live. Valerie smiled, that proud, knowing kind of smile that said she'd been waiting to hear those words. About time, baby. About damn time. The next few days were a slow unraveling of the old life. Together, we went back to my apartment to pack up the remnants, photos, clothes, memories that didn't belong to me anymore. On one shelf, I saw rows of framed pictures. Lena's graduation, her first apartment, her new job offer. Every milestone of hers was documented. Not one photo of us together. I stared for a moment, then quietly left them there. 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. Hello. Simone, it's Marcus. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Oh, I managed. Hi, how are you? He exhaled slowly. Better. Heartbroken, but better. There was a pause, that kind of silence that means there's too much to say. I wanted to call sooner, he said finally, but I figured you needed space. I did, I admitted. Still do, maybe. I understand, he replied softly, but there's something important I'd like to talk to you about. Could we meet? I hesitated. Is this about Lena? No, he said, voice steady. This is about you. We met the next day at a small cafe on Auburn Avenue, the kind of place where the air smells like espresso and hope. When I walked in, Marcus stood up immediately, pulling out a chair for me. His eyes looked tired, but clear, like someone who had finally stopped lying to himself. I've been thinking a lot, he began. About what happened. About everything I learned. And about you. I didn't say anything. I just listened. I want to build something that honors women like you, he continued. Women who gave up everything for others, and were never thanked for it. I blinked. What do you mean? I want to open a community center. A space for women who've been overlooked, dismissed, made to feel invisible. And I want you to help me lead it. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The world outside the cafe seemed to fade. Just the two of us, an idea, and a chance at something new. Me? I asked quietly. He smiled, a small, certain smile. No one else could. 6 months later, I stood outside a tall glass building downtown, the morning sun warming my face. The sign above the entrance shimmered in silver letters. The New Dawn Women's Center, for those the world forgot. My reflection stared back at me in the glass doors. Same brown skin, same eyes, but everything else had changed. My curls were shorter now, my clothes brighter, my smile no longer hesitant. I had learned how to take up space in my own story. Marcus walked up beside me, dressed in a simple navy shirt and khakis, pride lighting his face. You ready? He asked. More than I've ever been, I said. We stepped inside. The lobby buzzed with life. Women chatting, laughing, checking in for workshops. A bulletin board near the front desk overflowed with photos from job fairs, support groups, and wellness classes. I spotted Miss Dorothy, a 55-year-old who once came here crying after losing everything in a divorce, now leading a crochet circle in the lounge. Across the room, Keisha, who had survived years of emotional abuse, was teaching a self-defense class. And Mariah, a quiet woman who once couldn't even make eye contact, now ran our new career mentorship program with a voice that filled every room. I walked to the podium for our opening ceremony. My heart raced, but not from fear, from purpose. I used to think my worth depended on how much I could give to others. I began, scanning the faces before me. I poured everything into someone I loved, and one day, she told me to leave. The crowd went still, some nodding, others blinking back tears. But walking away from that pain, I continued, led me here, to women who don't just need to be saved, they need to be seen. Applause swelled through the room. I smiled, humbled and grateful. And then I saw her, standing quietly near the back, dressed in a simple blouse and jeans, was Lena. No makeup, no arrogance, just real. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to make a scene. She just listened. After the event, she approached slowly. Hi, she said, her voice small. Hi, I replied. I've been in therapy, she said softly. I volunteer at a shelter now. I read about the center online. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I nodded, cautious but calm. Thank you. She hesitated, twisting her fingers nervously. I know I'm not owed forgiveness, but I'd like to try to know you again. Not as the sister I took for granted, but as the woman you've become. I looked at her for a long time, and for the first time, I didn't see the sister who hurt me. I saw a woman trying to heal, just like I had. I don't need you to complete me anymore, I said. But maybe we can learn to be in each other's lives again. Slowly, honestly, her eyes watered. Whatever it takes. She didn't ask for a hug, and I didn't offer one. Some reconciliations don't start with an embrace, they start with understanding. As she turned to leave, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, spilling across the lobby like gold. Laughter echoed from down the hall, the sound of women rebuilding their lives. I turned toward the entrance, heart full. I wasn't anyone's shadow anymore. I was my own light. And as the sun dipped lower over Atlanta, I whispered to myself, New Dawn wasn't just the name of this place. It's my story now.